Essentially what I'm doing is I created a restaurant that's from 50 people to 300 people with no water, no electricity in the middle of nowhere. There was a waiting list to get into. Tickets would sell out so fast. Events were so small. They'd happen so frequent, so random, so all over the place that nobody can keep track of what was going on. It was brand new. Experience was brand new in 2019. Like partnerships that I know about today that still exist. It all happened that night. The beauty of that was knowing that I had the power to create a space that was so inspirational and so open and free and relaxing that people could be the best version of themselves in that space without ever feeling judged.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Your Hero's Journey, a holistic business podcast where we discuss the business tactics, the spiritual practices, personal habits, characteristics, and everything in between of what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. Today we have Dan Sabia, who is a renowned chef, 20 years deep, has worked with some of the best chefs in the world, such as Jean-Georges, and he now has started his own successful entrepreneur culinary business called Woodfire Food. He's had his business for about 5 years now, starting in 2018, and has really run some of the most intimate, well-run, produced events that I've been to personally, from a storytelling and a detail perspective. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. So we'll start off with just some quick rapid fire questions just to get the audience familiar with your background and who you are.
Beautiful.
So where would you consider to have your family from?
So my family both have origins between Sicily, Sardinia, and Spain. Origination, obviously, out of the Bronx, up through Yonkers, and then in through Westchester County. But I was raised in a household where food was the conversation, always.
I could see that with an Italian and a Spaniard background for sure. Okay, beautiful. And you grew up in Westchester?
I grew up in Westchester County, yeah.
Westchester, okay, nice. And where would you say that your background is in terms of spirituality and faith?
I come from obviously coming from a very old world, European family who was heavy in the Catholic world. I took a much different approach, I think, to belief. I spend more time really focusing on things like, guardian angels to spirit animals, to really focusing at nature as a real sort of like grounding point to base a lot of decisions off of, but also as a grounding point to like not float too far into the clouds.
Okay, I like that. It's a nice little balance.
Yeah.
And what type of entrepreneurial leader would you say you are? Are you a little bit more hands-off or hands-on?
I'm definitely hands-on. I'm a lead by example kind of person.
And would you say you're the visionary or the tactical type of?
I am the absolute visionary for sure.
Absolutely. I can definitely see that for you. All right. So let's start, before we get into the beginning of your journey, just describe Woodfire Food for us. What type of business is it and why did you start it?
So Woodfire Food as a whole is a experiential, open fire lifestyle brand that is not only about connecting people to the food, but also connecting people to the land and the artisans within the area that everything is kind of derived from. It's about utilizing the two most anchor points within human beings, which is a table and a fire, to bring people together and gather. And it creates a space where everybody is an equal, because there is no conversation happening while food is being eaten. And I think that is a very good grounding point for everybody to be the same, which is kind of a hard concept.
And it seems like elements of nature are really a cornerstone of your business.
Correct.
Why did you choose that?
Simplicity. I think if you boil things down to the bare minimum of what we are as primates, as human beings, it all comes from a nature standpoint of view. The hunt and gather mentality of knowing that you have to source your food accordingly, you have to find the right ingredients, and then to sit there and start a fire, build the table, start the entire menu. Everything is a conversation piece and it's a storyline about really focusing on the process and less about the final product.
I love that. You have such a draw to the details and the process of not only the food, but what it takes to create the food. What would you say what was your initial draw to cooking and the overall culinary experience?
If you point back, I guess, to like my years within restaurants, it was about just something that was comforting to me. It was something that I knew. It was something that was very sort of like, it was my confidence building, was my food. And if you ask me now today, it's about focusing on every single other element that causes causes people to feel comfortable. We focus on the idea of hospitality, and the real sort of like translation of hospitality is comfort. So if you focus on every single aspect, from the way that the chair feels, to the way that the linen feels, to the way that the glass feels in your hand, every one of those elements is important enough to change the overall experience of someone is happening during a dining experience.
That's really interesting. I feel like that really does contribute to the overall experience. But when you take a normal, I wouldn't consider a normal chef, but when you take a normal chef, they're not necessarily thinking about that entirety. Where do you feel like that differentiation came for you?
So I think, same thing. Like back when I was running restaurants, my full and total focus was on the singular plate sitting in front of the guest. And now my singular focus is actually on the overall dining space that the guest is sitting within. So food, and I hate to say it like this, but food is the last thing I think about, because I have a lot of comfort and a lot of confidence in knowing what the end product is. But everything from the temperature within the space, to the lighting, to the textures, colors, materials that we're using to kind of set these tables, all of these things should be resonating to something that provokes memories. And that's kind of the basis of it. It's I want to be able to cook a dish that brings people back to their grandmother, great aunt, great uncle, whoever it is, that gave them something that felt comforting then. And it's a snowball effect that I'm now attached to those moments, moving on within that person's life.
That's beautiful. Let's talk a little bit more about the beginning of your culinary experience. Sure. You've had such a rare opportunity to learn under one of the best chefs in the world, Jean-Georges, at a young age of 21. What was that experience in working in Michelin restaurants like?
I feel like it was like a fool's gold kind of moment, because I didn't really understand or know. I didn't know the caliber of what he was within those experiences. I had internal confidence within myself. I had the idea of knowing that whatever food I put on a plate, no matter who's sitting in front of me, they're going to enjoy it. And then I came every day looking to learn more, looking to learn from my mistakes, learn from my decisions, all of that stuff. And I feel like in this day and age, especially after running restaurants myself, that's something you can't teach cooks. You can teach cooks how to cook, but you can't tell them how to show up. And for me, it was all about showing up. It was all about like really being present within that moment and knowing that like, I'm here to make a mistake today because I'm going to learn from this mistake. And the mistakes were the exciting part. Even if it was, such a thing where I'm being yelled at or screamed at or things were thrown at me within there.
I was going to say, I've worked in the restaurant business. When you make a mistake back there, it's never necessarily exciting.
Those were all like really good learning lessons, but it also like really dictated how I continued to run restaurants when I was running them myself, of things that I would never do, because I learned the hard way. And that's kind of the basis of like the companies doing things the hard way. But people in this day and age don't know how to don't understand what that means. And it's how to essentially create a work environment for me that allows any walk of life to come in there and feel like they're getting something out of the overall experience. You can always teach skill. You can't teach passion.
That's huge. It's kind of a aspiration to go to a Michelin-star restaurant, right? Or if a chef was trained under Jean-Georges, they make sure that they mention that in the write-up. So I do feel like people go to these restaurants to feel. Do you feel like they go there to feel comfort, or is it a different experience? I
think it's about, and I hate to say it like this, restaurants like that are about being seen. Restaurants like that are like put that on your checkbox. Like I went there, like I could tell people that I went there, I experienced that. It's like having, the best new shoe or the best new bag or all that stuff. It's part of just like being something about, or, part of bigger. But on the back end, the people that are cooking within that place, providing that hospitality, they're thinking about comfort the entire time. But what it translates to is a refinement, a luxury almost, which is not obtainable for every walk of life, but a certain walk of life.
You do have to have a certain standard in order to be Michelin-star rated, right?
Sure. Yeah, 1,000%. You think about the standards are what is the highest part of it, but it's also from the consumer standpoint of view of you're walking into an experience ready to learn things that you've never known before, because that is what you're anticipating. You're looking at the simplicity of a grilled cheese and a tomato soup, but done in a 3 Michelin-starred restaurant is completely deconstructed, it's completely reorganized and served back to you. And when you see it, you're like, I don't know what that is. But when you eat it, you're like, the memory clicks in. You're like, I know this. I love this. I'm about this. How did you get to this point?
Okay. I love that. All right. I want to talk about, you've been in this industry for 15 years. What was the moment where you wanted to leave? Because a lot of people would consider that the pinnacle of success for a culinary chef.
Yeah, it's It's not the proudest moment, but a full and total mental breakdown is what occurred for me to realize that like I have gotten to a point where I'm no longer happy doing the thing that I thought I loved. When you spend so much time focusing on essentially making everybody else happy except for yourself, and your life relies on the review of somebody else eating something that you spend 80 hours a week doing, you put yourself in this position where you become so hyper vulnerable, and the standards are set so high and the atmosphere is set so high, and then it finally clicks. You realize that like the rest of your life doesn't exist anymore because you're there and your whole life is there. For me, that happened in 2018, and it was a very pinnacle moment where I just hit a reset button on my entire existence as a human being. I realized for the first time in my life that like I didn't know what else I would do besides food. But at that same time, I got to a point where I realized I couldn't move forward the way I was doing it because I was literally going to die mentally, emotionally, physically, in every mindset of it. So it was a moment like that was so gutturally shocking that took me to a point where I was like, okay, let's strip everything away and boil down the things that I love more than anything else.
Looking back, were there moments that led up to that mental breakdown where you probably could have maybe prevented the drastic reaction, but maybe have gotten to the solution sooner?
I don't think there was a point where like the warning symbol came up. I think when you're that invested in something and you give all of your life into something, you get tunnel vision and all you can see what's in front of you, which was that singular plate, right? But it also creates a moment for you where it forces you to take a step back and look at everything. And I think sometimes as an entrepreneur as a whole, when you invest yourself into an idea or a concept and you want to give it your all and you want to give everything you have into it, you forget sometimes what the most important things are. And it's not the singular focus, it's everything that goes into it. So I don't think there was an actual moment when I was like, oh shit, like I should probably like chill out for a second. There was just a moment where I was like, I was focusing on being the best of the best that I could be within the mindset that I had then. But it's funny when you get to that idea, when you get to that point where you think that perfection's your only answer, you realize you're the farthest away from the origination of why you started. It's about comfort. It's about feeding people. It's about connecting with people. It's about putting a plate of food on the table that everybody can see, focus on, understand, comprehend, but then taste and immediately connect to their own personal story. That's the beauty of food. I mean, that's really what it's a bedrock thing that's really connects us all.
Yeah. That's really interesting because I feel like, especially in the entrepreneur space, hustle culture is like the pinnacle of what everyone is pushing. And you've actually ran away from hustle culture to start your own business. And I'm assuming that you're not in that hustle tunnel vision mentality anymore.
I mean, for the first 3.5 years, 1,000%, but it's different when it's all your choices. It's different when you're making every single decision of how to move forward. You're not making decisions for other people all of a sudden. Your decisions are based on your own emotion, your reaction, all of that stuff. So yeah, like when you make a mistake, when it's your own project, it's so much more enjoyable than when you make a mistake working for somebody else. Because you're like, this is an absolute lesson right here that I'm never going to do again. And I can now set a standard for anybody else who's going to come in here to do that. The hustle is always there, but you realize that it's a marathon and it's not a race. Like you're here in the long run. Building a business and building something that's going to take you into the quote unquote retirement of your existence, but also support 20, 30, 40, 50 people that work with you. It's not about how fast you can get there. It's how well you can build a structure for multiple people to stand on to really sort of like be the high tide that raises all ships together.
That's real. I mean, there's an old African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
So let's revert to the point in your journey where you realize that you can't be in this business anymore. How did you know an entrepreneurial business was the next step for you?
I knew without a doubt, no matter what, gun to the head, I could never work for somebody. I realized that. I realized that my beliefs, my standard, my concept of what was right and wrong was different from everybody that I've ever worked with. I've learned so much from all of those individuals. I've grown so much from all those individuals. But at the end of the day, I was only happy doing things that I wanted to do personally. I understand. I think it's also just like, you're raised in an industry where these guys have set a standard for themselves for so long and there's no reason for them to change because they've got everything they've gotten because of those standards. But sometimes I think they forget that there's other ways to get to the same solution. And I was the other way always. And I love the idea of being the other way, but I have such an addiction and such a high to problem solving. I love the idea of knowing that like the rest of the world looks at what I'm doing. They're like, how? And I'm like, I don't know. But when I'm in it, I know how to do it. But I couldn't explain it to you because it's just something that like is inside of you. And you boil it down to the simplicity of like making people feel good about what they're doing. You just kind of like live within that moment for a little bit.
And what were some of those right and wrong differentiations that you feel like you had from some of your bosses?
I think the one thing that people tend to forget about the hospitality industry, it is so emotion driven. It is so about insecurity. Every single chef is an artist, right? Every single artist thrives on emotion. So everything they're doing is emotionally provoked, not logically provoked, right? So if a chef is telling me to cut mirepoix, carrot, celery, and onions, a very specific way to make a chicken stock with it, I'm sitting there looking at him being like, what? There's no logical reason why this has to be cut that way to make that taste better. It doesn't work. And it's like after reading books like The French Laundry and like Thomas Keller, who's like the best of the best of the best within the United States, and he's like, you have to cut your mirepoix a certain way. I'm like, well, because you're the guy and you could say that and that's fine. And whoever you tell that to, they're going to listen to it because you're like, you're Thomas Keller. Why wouldn't I do that? And I'm sure in his brain, there's a reason and a purpose for all of it. For me, it was just like, for what? I can get the same flavor, the same consistency, the same viscosity doing it my way than if I did it your way. Sometimes when you're that guy and when you live such an insecure life and you become a leader, sometimes you just make things up just to make things up to feel like you're in power. It's like a reminder to yourself that you're the guy in charge. And if anybody questions you on that, you're like, well, I don't care if it's right or wrong. This is just what I told you to do, so do it or go somewhere else. And I never wanted that. For me personally, I never wanted that. If someone comes to me with an idea or a concept and I've never done it before, I'm like, show me. I'm ready. I want to see something else. I love the idea of learning from others because I think that is the truest form of entrepreneurship, is knowing when your like kind of line is done and you have to kind of bring other people in to understand like what's next and build from there.
Absolutely. Okay. So it's 2018. You're like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to start my own thing. What are the next steps in your mind of what you need to do in order to get this business off the ground?
November 8th, 2018. I'll never forget that day for the rest of my life. I had this idea and I had this concept that I wanted to, I lived so many years and spent so much time living in this industry where like farm to table was a thing and, sourcing locally and having the best of this and the best of that. But then you kind of realize as you're going through in all these restaurants, we talked about this the other day, like half of those places are still getting deliveries from large box companies. It's just kind of part of it. And what I realized is like, I love reading stories of how a person came from a word bubble to an actual physical idea, to a physical execution of it. So on November 2018, I threw a 50-person dinner at a farm in Ridgefield, Connecticut that's been there for over 100 years. It's one of the best lamb farms for me, probably in the Northeast, run primarily by women that really focus on the storyline of how they feed their lambs. And I decided to write a menu that was essentially the entire seasonal change of the lamb's diet, finishing with the lamb itself. And then I invited the farmer themselves. I then invited a vegetable farmer that I've been working with forever. And I saved, it was about making people realize how important they are. That was the big thing for me. It wasn't about me that day. It was about everybody else that I've worked with. That farmer that came, I had saved heirloom beans for 7 years and I cooked them all that day and served it back to her. It was about put your phones down. If you have a question about the food or a question about what we're doing today, turn to your left, turn to your right, because those people are sitting next to you. The conversation of why are we here? Why are we doing this? How did you get to this point? Is so much more important in real life than it is in an Instagram comment or a feed or whatever it is. It was about really highlighting the bare minimum of what it is to make an experience happen, right? If we're going to start a restaurant that's about cooking everything from scratch, right? why wouldn't I want to build the table from scratch? Why wouldn't I want to know the guy who makes the plates? Why wouldn't I not know, want to know the guy who made the silverware?
Because it's easier.
Because it's way easier that way.
You have so much other things to do. I'm
right.
sure, like
but
actually
now
cook the food.
You're sitting in a room full of people. And it was like, and I look back at today and it was like structurally and executionally like one of the worst events I've ever done in my life, right? Like I forgot water.
Did you cook everything yourself? Like did you have chefs?
So I've been talking about this open fire concept for so long while I was running restaurants that I had actually 14 separate chefs that showed up that day.
Really?
To experience what it was, but also help. They were like, well, how are you going to do it? And I just kept saying, I have no idea. And that was the fuel. How much of your own
money did you have to put into it?
That first event was easy, like $5,000 all in. But like, I had like $400 in my bank account, like I literally stayed at the farm for 4 days because I was like, quote unquote, homeless at that point in time. It was a point where it was like, I'm going to throw everything I have at this because I believe in it so much. And no matter what, I'm going to make it happen. And, it's just funny, like, you go through that process, you have that experience, but it was literally one photograph that was taken of that night that like transformed the next 6 years of my life.
Really?
Yeah.
And how so? Because it sounds like everyone that was in attendance was mainly the people that you're trying to more so build as resources versus people that would actually be clients of yours per se.
It was never about what Wood Fire Food has turned into. It was never about how it started. The catering thing was never the reason why I wanted to do this. It's just what came of it. That room, the people that were there were a healthy mix of people that were waiting to say, like, I told you so, you can't do this. And the people that are like, we've been waiting to see what you can actually do. Like, that's the perfect balance of it. You live in this world where everybody wants to challenge you or they want to agree with you. And the more people that were there to challenge me, the better I felt. Because I was like, well, no one's as sick as I am.
Yeah.
Like, no one's as fucking as dedicated to this as I am. And I will be here for 28 hours straight, 30 hours straight to make sure this is done correctly. And it turned into something that was like, it started so many catchphrases for where we are today, where it was like I said, like I forgot water glasses. Like I forgot like heat. It was 40 degrees in the middle of November. But 50 people were sitting inside of a barn and the wine was being poured and the conversation was there and the candles were there and everybody came in as strangers. By the middle course, they were friends. And by the time they left, they were family and everybody was kissing and hugging each other on the way out. And that dinner single-handedly started so many independent conversations, which led to actual business propositions, which actually led to like partnerships that I know about today that still exist. It all happened that night. And the beauty of that was knowing that I had the power to create a space that was so inspirational and so open and free and relaxing that people could be the best version of themselves within that space without ever feeling judged or ever feeling anything. That was my whole thing, was like, you come to my dining room, you're the most important person in the room. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're nobody or if you're a CFO of a company. You come to my dining room, everybody's the same here. And you treat everybody the same. And we talk together like we're the same. Like that's the beauty of it. Everybody has like 3 things in common. They have food, they have family, and they have stress. Everybody has those 3 things in common.
Yep.
So why not sit at a table with, 3-liter bottles of wine and just bitch and complain all night while eating an amazing meal and then be like, fuck, our lives aren't that bad because things are really going good, Like that was it. And that's how it all started. And it just kept evolving from there. And then as the people started showing up that year, they were like, well, I have a really big backyard. Like, could we do it in my backyard? And I was like, well, yeah, if you're okay with not making any decisions and I just tell you what we're going to do, then sure, I'm in. And then it snowballed from there. And it happened so fast. And there was, like I said, there was a singular photo that I had put up that night after that dinner, which turned into, I would say, probably $100,000 to $120,000 in events within the next year.
Wow. It
turned into partnerships with like, cast iron cooking companies. It turned into consulting programs that I did up in Toronto. It turned into so many things. And everybody was just like, I just don't understand how you got here. And I was like, I'm just happy to do this. There's not a reason why I got here. I don't know how we did this. I don't know how any of this happened, but I know that today I have a purpose now. And I'm just going to roll with this purpose. And I'm going to build this concept, this business, this idea through that. Because I don't have any fear all of a sudden. I'm nothing to be afraid of.
And what would you define your purpose as?
I'm a connector. And I'm a storyteller. I somehow bring the best possible human beings into the same room together, and I create relationships that I don't actually have to touch. I create spaces where people are now surrounded by people that are smarter than them. And as entrepreneurs across the board, from photographers to whatever it is that you do, you come to one of our spaces and all of a sudden you're like, I'm not the smartest person here. And I'm so intrigued at what's going on. I created spaces where the finance guys from Goldman Sachs and the same farmers that were picking the radishes they were eating were in the same room talking about life.
And how do you create that? Because it sounds like you tend to have bigger personalities in the room that can have a bit of an ego, people that tend to be on their phones very often. And I know that's also one of your things where you ensure people have their phones down. How do you create that environment where someone can feel comfortable and vulnerable in a room full of strangers? And also talk about how you do that through food and your storytelling.
Yeah, I think it's two big concepts, like I always laugh about it, but it's like it's a real dominant role. Like I walk into a space and I control the space just by demeanor. I walk in, I don't care who you are. If you're talking over anybody, I'll tell you to quiet down. Like I just make sure that and that's the other thing too, like I don't let groups sit together. I separate everybody because groups build these internal conflicts. They build cockiness, right? You separate these individuals.
You have name placeholders.
Right.
And okay.
Yeah. I think it's important to do that. I think it's important to get people out of their comfort zone because that's when you see the insecurities in human beings. And that's where I thrive. It's like, I got you. Like, you're safe here. I see you. You're freaking out right now. I love it. But here, you're so good. You're going to be better than you came in here today than when you leave today. It's that, but it's also creating food that from a visual and sort of illustrated standpoint of view of reading the menus, but also seeing it come to the table. People are like, I know what that is. So I'm very excited and comfortable to eat that. But then when they take that first bite, they're like, what the fuck is this? Like literally I literally watched you cook this for 6 hours. And now I took my first bite. I don't understand how you got here. Yeah. For me, that's it. It's a surprise element. And then boiling it down and never really telling everybody what's in the dish. Because everybody's all like, oh, I don't eat that, so I'm not going to eat it. And I'm like, well, you have no idea. If you didn't know if it was there, you would never say that.
Yep.
Forcing people out of their comfort zone is also my big thing. The more anxiety you have, the more stress you have in your life, the more I hook on to you. And I'm just like, we don't do that here.
I love that.
So you're good. I promise you're safe here. I create a space where everybody's an equal. And I think that's really what it comes down to. So even if especially when we do things like corporate events and stuff like that, the dishwashers or the janitors there in comparison to the CEOs or CFOs. And I'm like, those are most people here. You guys can't do your job if they're not there. Making that sort of that realization and putting people in that spotlight being respect the people that do the groundwork because without them, you ain't got nothing.
It's true.
And I don't care who you are. I care more about them because their work ethic is everything to me. And that's kind of where it is. So for me, it was all about creating that level ground and then having a plate of food that caused people to stop and think for a second and just not say any words and be like, I don't understand what's happening. But now I'm so intrigued and I want to know more about who you are. I think watching other people's reactions to across the table is a big thing. You have these guys that are the Fortune 500, and the opposite side is the other people, but everybody's eyes are rolling back the same exact way. When it comes to the first bite, you're like, oh, we are the same. This is an experience right now. That's awesome. The beauty of it.
That's beautiful. I love what you just mentioned about people and how you have to appreciate everyone from the bottom all the way to the top because we're all contributing to the same vision. Talk about the team that you felt like you needed to have in order to execute your vision, and also give us an idea of how long it took in order for you to make your first profit.
Okay. So I'm going to answer the second one first, and then we'll go backwards from there. So when you want to talk about profit, I look at that in 3 different scenarios. Okay. We have the obviously fiscal profit, which was year 1 for us, because we started a concept that never existed anywhere else. We started something that never was known of, and we started something that people wanted so badly that I was just making up numbers.
And what is that concept exactly?
So I think essentially what I'm doing is I created a restaurant that's from 50 people to 300 people. With no water, no electricity in the middle of nowhere. I could set up a restaurant with the best food that was challenging every restaurant that was open within that area.
It's a mobile restaurant.
It's 100% mobile.
Got it.
But it was also a restaurant that there was a waiting list to get into. Tickets would sell out so fast. Events were so small. They'd happen so frequent, so random, so all over the place that nobody can keep track of what was going on. All you saw was photos. All you saw was people's sort of reviews. All you saw was what people, what they were taking. They're like, what restaurant was that? They were like, it wasn't. We literally went to a 200-acre farm and we had to drive a half a mile into the farm to get to where the dining room was. And then that was it. There was just candles, that sort of thing. So I think being able to create something where I was writing these storylines, writing these menus from scratch in the moment, within the place where this product was coming from, was something that didn't exist anywhere, like, so that was an instance, and it was brand new. Experience was brand new in 2019.
Yeah.
We were just coming off the tail end of like Instagram really doing its thing. This was before TikTok. This was before really kind of like all of that. This was like Instagram was like at the highest point of what it was, Yelp, all that stuff. It was all about socially eating in the social world. It wasn't about physically eating. It was about taking photos about where you were, but not really acknowledging what was happening.
Yep.
And I was just like, nah, we're not doing any of that.
Yeah.
Like, you come to this place, you put your phone
away.
It
was the flex era.
It was the flex era, yeah. So, I mean, from a fiscal point of view, the profit started year one because I started with nothing. I had no overhead. I didn't have a building. I didn't have a staff. It was one lunatic hiring people for the day, paying in cash, getting everything done how I wanted to, and then selling these tickets at between $175 to $275 a seat, and just making it up as I went and figuring out like, oh, I can do this with like a 12% food cost.
So you did you have to pay for the wine? Did you have to pay for the plates that you mentioned you have the partnership with?
So, we do, when I first started, the concept was so wild and so sort of free that we had so many sponsors that were just like, we just want to be involved. How can we be involved?
That's awesome.
I also, when I first started, like, I didn't have a liquor license, right? So I was calling wineries, breweries, distilleries and be like, you want to come and serve your own alcohol at my event? Please come do so. Because that's how you can get around it, right? If they have the license to do so, all they're selling is a tasting for the day. I'm selling a ticket to an experience. I'm not selling alcohol. All these little things were like the loopholes that kind of go through there.
That's a nice little loophole. I feel like many people may not know about.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's the safest loophole to go through, but it's something that you can definitely, like, when it comes down to brass tacks, you're like, well, I didn't do anything wrong. I just kind of followed the rules, you know? But that was kind of like, that exciting part of it. And, from there, it was rental companies donating things. I was an avid antique collector. I had 300 vintage plates just in my garage. So, but I was also the same psychopath that was like hand washing all of those at the end of these events at 12:30 at night, like
insane.
It was a lot. So on the fiscal side of it, it was instant profit from year one, and we grew every single year after that, even through the pandemic. We profited off the pandemic because we were essentially an outdoor restaurant that didn't have to stand by any of the legalities of what was going on. We were hosting 50-person restaurant nights in cul-de-sacs of people's neighborhoods with two tops all over the place, ringing a bell, people walking up, grabbing their own plates, following the standard. And then when restaurants reopened again, people were like, it does not feel the same anymore. And I was like, great, we're going to open up a restaurant in this neighborhood next week. Come, awesome. Here's the meal, whatever it is. And then weddings started from there. And it was like 40-person weddings, 30, 20, 10-person weddings. We did about 30 events, I think, in total in 30-30 and in 2020, and actually like turn an actual profit where everybody else was failing. I started bringing in chefs from every restaurant that was closing in my area to work with me. I was bringing in artisans that could no longer sell their products in the store because the stores weren't open. And now I was selling these online menus to people they can come and pick up, but utilizing local honey, local bread, local chocolate, like all of these things. Like, for me, it was always about being the high tide, never being about the man on top of the mountain. I never found any success in being the hero. I only found success in the legacy of what I wanted to do. And I live by that. And I've always lived by that. And that's why, like, we talk about like moments like this where I decided to like stand out from what I've created has always been something I didn't do because it was never about me. It was about the greater good. And now I'm kind of at a point now where I'm like, okay, I've turned this off for long enough. Like, let's talk about everything.
The balance is key.
Balance is definitely key. And then the other profits that we really kind of like talked about were like, I would say 3 years in, where it was, we now have a staff of 40. We have a staff of 52 right now. And what
does that consist of?
So it consists of about 7 internal members that are everything from admin to office work to executive chefs to event captains / coordinators to bar managers, right? That's all internal for us. Everybody else outside of that is essentially a contractor for the day and shows up on site. I've been fortunate enough to work with contractors that have been with me for 6 years and they've never left. And they're like, yeah, but they all have full-time jobs and this is what they do in the summertime. Like,
so
that's their thing.
No marketers, no business development, nothing at all.
Never had to. And it was a really strange concept and we talked about this last night, like for 3 years, I didn't have a website. I didn't have a phone number. I didn't have any of this stuff. It was just Instagram. It was just like, I'm just pumping these photos out and people are like, what the fuck is going on? Like, how do I get to this?
I would say social though, like social really is the new age marketing platform.
100%.
Right? Like any Gen Z and even millennials, it's like we're looking at your Instagram before we're looking at your website.
It's in your resume. That's exactly what it is.
Exactly. And you also get to see how much buy-in does this company have? How many followers do they have? Are people engaging in the comments? Like, you get a little bit more of a realistic preview.
That's why it's been so entertaining for me. And I've taken such a back seat to the social media world in the past year and a half, because it's just like, you know, you hire all these kids and they're like 19 and 20 and 21, and they're like sitting here and they're saying these like phrases to me. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you're saying.
I don't either.
But like, this is not a gimmick to me. Like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
So you either take this seriously or like not doing it. But you know, that was the beauty behind it. But like, why I say like that 3-year mark was so important to me, because I started hearing my own staff members explain what we do the same that I did. And I was like, okay, we have something now.
Yeah. It
created a culture. The other big thing about us is like as focused as we are on sustainability, obviously with the food products and everything that we do, it's also about sustainable like work life. You know, like I'm paying people the same salaries or same pay rates as a 40-hour-a-week job, but these people are only working 3 days a week. And I give them that sort of freedom to make their own decisions. Be like, hi, this is a task that I need done. As long as it's done by this date, I don't care how long it takes you. But being able to.
That's kind of an anomaly for
a little bit, yeah.
For an entrepreneurial business, especially in America, we're the pinnacle of capitalism. Why do you take that approach?
Because I spent so many years of my life working and getting paid for half of the time that I put in. I worked at so many amazing high-end restaurants where I was doing 80 hours a week and getting paid for 40. You know, I spent so much time making other people successful. I never wanted that for anybody else that worked for me. Let me do all the hard work in the beginning, but now you're just here to support me. But if you want to come and work for me and I never have to worry about you leaving, then that starts with pay. Pay starts there because it's a form of pride. Then the work ethic clicks in and they get the instant gratification of knowing that the guests are standing right in front of them, getting that instant, like, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. Another form of pride. Pride is like an amazing thing within the human mindset because it gives you purpose. We talked about this the other night. It's like purpose is the main driving point behind what I do with my staff. I give everybody a purpose. You know, Richie DeLucia, like one of my favorite human beings that worked for us. He was a Marine. He never touched food a day in his life. He's been with us for about 4 years now, and he runs one of the most important stations within the kitchen because I just gave him an opportunity to figure it out. And we supported him, and we told him that, like, whatever you need, we're here for you. We'll never let you fall, but you have to fuck things up to learn it. Like, I'm not going to do this for you. And I think when you find people that are like, I have a purpose now, I have a reason, I think it's so much. I think you think about how many dining rooms you walk into and everybody's shoulders are curled in because they're just there to get like their job and they're like getting yelled at in the back for like what reason. You come to our events, everybody's chest is out. Everybody's there. They're smiling. They're happy. Nobody's miserable. Like, this is about, are you happy? I'm happy. If you guys are happy, I'm happy. But at the end of the day, no matter what, they know that they did a great job because they're there.
Yeah.
And there's so many other reminders, not only from, I think, the guest standpoint of view, but obviously the pay, obviously like my own sort of like pats on the back, obviously knowing this company is booked out 1.5 years in advance always. And it's because of the ethic they put in place that I've really started, but they follow through. And then for me, the most exciting part now is when they're teaching our culture to the new staff members that are coming in. I don't have to say a word to anybody.
That's impressive.
They're already starting and they're already going down that route.
That's really impressive. And that was going to be my next question, because I think you mentioned some great things into how to instill pride from like a longevity standpoint, but I think there are still habits and I think encouragement that sometimes needs to happen on a day-to-day, but that doesn't sound like it comes from you. You've actually created a culture where it's kind of running on autopilot by your employees, and that's what every business strives for. Right. How do you feel like you've created that beyond just being an example? I think
it's two things. You know, like I laugh to this kind of question because it started as a joke internally with us. Jackie, who is Richie's sister, the sweetest, humblest, most like cute as a button human being you'll ever meet in your life. I think it was like her 3rd week of working with us. And I kind of walked up behind her and I was like, can you do me a favor? And she's like, yeah, what's up? I was like, I need you to go around every 15 minutes and tell everybody they're doing a great job and they need to drink water. And she just took it so seriously. And then it turned into an entire year of her saying that to everybody. And we just created this world that was like, there is no stress here. Everybody's doing a great job. And if something goes wrong, who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck? Because at the end of the day, the food's going to save us. You know, like if the issues go down and things go wrong, as long as the clients have no idea, why does it matter?
Now, that's interesting coming from someone who's a perfectionist.
But I think perfection comes in different ways when you realize that, like, perfection isn't everything being exactly in its place. Sometimes perfection is like the cool side of the pillow. Perfection has a different mindset as you get older. When you really start to minimalize what's important, perfection is the ice cold glass of water. Perfection is the squeeze of lemon over the top of zucchini. Perfection is something that can be as simple as you're doing a great job today.
That's awesome. I love that. So it sounds like from a business standpoint, you guys were pretty successful from the beginning, smooth sailing. Did it feel like that internally?
It felt like we were just trying to catch our breaths. It felt like we were so bombarded and so overwhelmed by the reaction we were getting. Now, mind you, like year one, I made everything up. I made the entire thing up from start to finish.
What do you mean?
There was no steps of process. There was no rules. There was no standards. It was just like, what are we doing today? And I'm like, I don't know. We're going to figure it out when we get there. Year two turned into, okay, we have a little bit of idea what we're doing, but still no concept of it. Every year, we didn't focus on getting better. We focused on just like actually putting into paper what we were doing. I set a standard for myself by telling people I'm going to do all of this stuff with no idea of how I'm going to do it. And my only choice is to do it.
You ever have a doubt to like go back to the culinary industry?
Never.
That was never an option.
Never. But I always could. And that was always like my mindset. I could always go back to run other people's restaurants. That's easy. I could always do that. So if things go really bad or go really south, I could make 4 phone calls.
Got it.
And be back in Manhattan or back in Washington, D.C. or back in, wherever, running somebody else's restaurant, making them successful and collecting that 6-figure salary and doing all that and have no stress in my life. But I don't want that. I don't ever want to answer to anybody. I just want to be able to wake up in the morning being like, today, I have a concept. I have no idea how I'm going to do it, but I have 50 staff members that are going to make it happen. So we're good to go. Sometimes you just got to throw it at the wall and just like see how it actually sticks.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, you're literally making things up every day.
Yeah.
Sure, you can follow everybody else's business model, but then you're not an entrepreneur. You're just another carbon copy of somebody else.
Yep. That's 100% true. That's exactly what I'm doing with this podcast right now.
Yeah. Just go with the flow.
I was like, there's no research on any of this, but I'm just going to fucking do it. And we're here.
Because when you put people in a natural element, you cause them to react without any preference, preparedness, or any of that stuff. You get real things.
Yep.
That's what this all should be about. It's just being real.
I love that.
So we went through pretty much the end of 2019 together. 2020, I was like, okay, well, I had this open fire catering company that essentially can't do anything right now. So I want to turn my website into this grub hub, for family style wood fire dinners that you could pick up at any farm within the region that we were within. So literally once a week, we would set up at any random farm. We would cook whatever the farm had to offer that day. We would sell our meals online, and then we'd either have a delivery service or we'd have people come to the farm and pick up their dinners. And that's what we did for the entire pandemic until essentially restaurants reopened. Then we switched over to doing like the more private events with everybody. What we were able to do within that model and how we were able to turn our business into the absolute pivot point of just like, yeah, we're Grubhub. What's up? Like, you want to have amazing food from a local farm in the area that's cooked over an open fire? Come at us. We're here. You can order for 6, put your allergies in there, put all the stuff in there. You can tip your driver. You can do all this stuff all through our online platform.
Impressive.
Last year was definitely the hardest year personally, the hardest year business-wise. We're at a point now where every decision we were making, we're buying property. We're like doing all of this stuff that was like.
Why was it one of the hardest years?
It was the hardest year because we threw everything that we had worked on, through everything that we had built together at ideas and concepts we've never done before. The real estate world, right? Like,
the whole concept has never been done before.
Never been done before, right? But now we're like, we have all of this money just chilling. It's good. Everything's fine. What are we going to do with all this money? Well, we're going to buy a property because that's what you do. You have now assets that are no longer liquid. You have assets that sit at this structure and they're like, that's my money over there. That's a really good looking structure. That money's going to be there for a couple of years and it's going to grow.
What's like a range of that money that someone can feel comfortable in this business and say like, okay, this is my structure. We can start building now.
I think we purchased our property for, well, that's the other thing too. It's like as we're younger, we look at houses and we're like, I can't afford a house, right? And you're like, I can't afford a $250,000, $300,000 home. But then they're like, no, you only need $20,000 as a deposit.
So,
and you're like,
yeah, put it down.
Oh, okay, yeah, we can let's buy a couple.
We're all
of them.
just learning about credit,
right? It's like, and it's like dealing with good debt and bad debt.
Yep.
Like I'm like like we talked about the other night, like watching TikTok and be like, you know what I learned the other day? This is what we should be doing. But it was also like we booked 60 events that year. We decided to move our business from Westchester County up to Columbia County. we operated essentially in a place that like didn't have running water for some of the weeks we were up there. Like it was a thing that was just like, how do we do what we do? We spent all of this money buying this property, and now we all of a sudden don't have the right amount of money to like make sure that there's a building for us to prep in. It's like all these little things that you never think about. So it created a very, I would say, hostile year, because naturally, as you see, you know, as you're like looking at everything you're trying to do and you're just scraping by, but you're like, we have the capital to do what we need to do. We have this property. We have a functioning business. Why don't we have any money to pay anybody? Where did it all go? You know, like we made the big jump to do the real estate side of it, but it wasn't, I think, the jump that we were like internally ready for. And I think that's kind of the learning point of things, right? You know, you have to make those. It wasn't a mistake. You have to make those jumps to know what you're worth, to understand what your integrity really is. You know, like we just celebrated the other day, like an entire year. I mean, it was like that property caused us so much stress. There was almost a foreclosure involved. It was like a whole thing, but we just celebrated like 3 weeks ago, like the 1-year anniversary of like buying back the house from the bank. Like we got it to a point, no matter what, we worked day and night to make sure that that property was not getting taken away from us, no matter what. It's all we had. Yeah. It was literally all we had. And then, you know, you go into that and then it was, okay, well, we're going to do 65 events this year. Like we're going to go balls to the wall. Yeah, why not? We need money. So we have to work as hard as we possibly can. And then your staff is like, I didn't sign up for this. Yep. I didn't sign up to work more. I signed up
for 3 days.
Yeah, I didn't sign up for this. And they're catching their pay and they're like, yeah, but I want more. And I'm like, there is no more. Like, what do you mean you want more? Like, you have no idea what's going on. And I think that was a big realization for me. It was like, nobody understands. Yep. When you are the person that decides to make all the decisions for everybody else's well-being, those people that well-being is in favor for, they don't understand why you do the things you do. They just look at their paycheck.
And how do you keep them motivated through those times?
You know, I just had an amazing therapy session the other day about this. This is good.
Love it.
You know, you want to be you want to be the guy. Like you want to take care of everybody. I grew up in a household surrounded by Sicilian men that their fucking pockets were full of cash all the time and they paid for everybody's everything. I had the same mentality, but I didn't have the pockets full of cash. I took care of everyone. Meals, travel experiences, going to restaurants in Manhattan, showing them all the things that I love about life, but like the bills were like $600, $700, $800 a night. And you're just like, well, whatever, I'll figure it out. I enticed people by showing them the lifestyle that I wanted to create. But that's like 5 years from now. That's not now. Yeah. You know, like I had to do that and I had to see that. And, you know, to this day now, I look at it now and I focus on individuals at this point. And I focus on the individuals and what they need. I really dig into each one of my staff members and I look them in the eye and I can already tell who you are as a person by just like reading you. And that's what I feed on now. It's like, you want to come and work a couple extra hours? Hey, I noticed you were having a frustration the other day with this dish. You want to come up to the property and I'll teach you one-on-one, me and you? We'll do that. Hey, I heard from so-and-so you were struggling to pay this rent. Just come to me. I got you. No problem. You know, like I focus on individual needs because these people provide support for me to do what we do, and I couldn't do what I do without them.
The result of that in your business?
1,000%. 1,000%. And the only way, and it's funny, we just talked about the other day, the way that I really see it the most is when we do our annual reviews and the people talk about their experience throughout the year. And they talk to others about what they do. And I hear from the public, or I'll have a client that calls me and they're like, hey, I ran into so-and-so at dinner the other night and all they could talk about was what you've been doing for them.
That's amazing.
You know, for me, it's I can't see it. I still can't see it. All I can hear is what their interpretation of what's going on is. And that's because I'm still so involved in so many things. This is the first year that, like, you know, I'm here today. You know, like we have a wedding this weekend and I'm not up there and I'm not worried about the prep. I'm not worried about what's coming in today. I'm not worried about any of that because I am officially at a point where, number one, I know the staff can probably do it better than I can. But also, number two, I'm aware that like my presence sometimes is nerve-wracking for people. And I laugh at them all the time because like I'll go to an event and I'll just like sit in the background and I'll like pick basil. And then like Denny, who is our executive chef, he's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, nothing. I just want to be here.
Like, this is fucking amazing.
Like, this is like, nobody is talking to me. I was like, leave me the fuck alone. You know, like that's where it
sounds
is.
like a dream.
You know, and that sometimes that's what it really like, you know, bear down to. It's like, sometimes I'll do weeks where I prep a menu by myself. And I don't, it's not, nobody did anything wrong. I just want to get back to that. I stopped, you know, when we talked about this last night, it was like, I stopped loving what I created because I created something that was so efficient and so didn't need me anymore that I had no purpose and I wasn't ready to do what was next yet.
Is it love or is it attachment that you disassociate?
It's a passion project at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. It's a passion project. I started this with the three main concepts that I love more than anything else. Mm-hmm. Open fire cooking, interior design, and making people feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. That's it. I can walk into any space and make people feel like they belong there. You know, like that's why I started this. And then I created a machine that can pump out 50, 60, 70, $80,000 weddings and just do its thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't really have to be there. And I realized that that's the complete and total opposite of what I wanted. I started this to like rewrite the hospitality industry, re-understand why we do what we do, the purpose of what we do, but more importantly, to connect people directly with the experience of what's happening that night. Mm-hmm. So this is the year, and like, we just talked about this, like, you know, we're doing 30 events this year.
Instead of 6.
It was a personal choice. I was like, no, we're done. I'm not doing more.
Now, are you making less money?
No, that's not an option.
So different types of events.
Same type of events, just the right clients. A lot more travel.
And
a lot more travel.
How did you get the quote unquote right clients? Word of mouth?
The power of no. The power of just saying no. That's how you get the right clients.
That's real.
The more you say no, the right people show up.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm a firm believer in that, right? Yep. Like when you say no to something, you are telling the universe what it is that you do want, right? So you're redirecting your own path. But that's hard when you're an entrepreneur because you're essentially, you eat what you kill.
Right.
And so you have to have the faith to know that something else is going to come.
So like, you know, I want to stand on my own toes and be like, yeah, it's like, you know, I know what the fuck I'm doing. I know my shit. But the other reality is like, we get like 16 inquiries a week. Like I get to pick and choose what I want to do.
That's amazing.
We've built something that like people I've never known before, never tasted our food, or like, I want to book you for 2026. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem.
Okay, so I got to book you in like 2 years in advance at this point.
You know, but it's like, but that's also the other thing too, is like, if I continue to book less of these style of events, then I get to do more of the things that I want to do, you know?
Yep.
Like the event that you were at last year, that was an event that I wanted to do. It was something that I took on after our entire was booked fully. Mm-hmm. But I had the meeting with her, had the sit down, heard the story of how he started the business, like all that stuff. So many similarities, you know, and that's why like when that opening speech, when I did it that middle, it was like literally I was retelling his story in my own words.
You did.
Because it was the same exact thing. And that's why we had such a good connection that night. But those are the events that I want to do because it pulls so much more. And it's like, yeah, I can lean on the fact that like it creates more business, but it also, the reality is like you surround yourself in a room full of creators, a room full of people that are doing their own thing, hustling it, are so humble. Like everybody within that space that's like, you would have never known what their actual job positions were if they didn't say it out loud.
Yep.
They were a bunch of normal people.
That's actually true. Yeah.
You know, it was such a cool, calm, collective atmosphere. And it turned into so many more events for us. It turned into so much more opportunity, but it also turned into like why I'm here today. Like the conversations that came from it was really the payout for me. You know, it was like we were tired. Like we shouldn't have not done that event physically, but we were there and we had a blast doing it. It was something that we don't get to do very often because we're usually like, you know, up in the woods somewhere. Like we were in a warehouse in the middle of Brooklyn.
Literally.
You know,
I was a little hesitant. I was like, because I'm not gonna lie, I am a little bit of like the sceney New York City girl.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
I like to go to the poppin' spots. So when my homegirl invited me, I was like, I don't even know the name of this production company, but I was like, you know what, let's just try it. Let's go. One of the best events that I've been to, and it has to do with the details. Like I remember like when I was sitting down, it had like this personalized like a Polaroid, like with my name on it. Yep. And then you come out and you're telling a whole story along with the dishes. It's like, wow, there's so much thought that goes into it. It's so unique that whether you're told to put your phone down or not, you're just so engrossed in what's happening because you're following along with the story.
Right.
I obviously have an idea of what that consists of because I was there, but for people that aren't familiar with the wood fire food experience, give us an idea of how you bring storytelling into your food and the courses. Because again, as you mentioned, you don't allow your clients to choose what they want to serve.
Correct.
And I'm sure they're paying you a decent amount of money.
Correct.
So that takes a lot of trust. And obviously people come back because you basically are growing from not only Instagram, but really word of mouth.
Right.
So the storytelling, I think, really is the differentiator in what makes you guys successful. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think the most fun part for me, and I know it's the most fun part for actually like, the kitchen staff themselves, is the fact that we never replicate menus. Like that's not something we do. We have seasonal dishes that rotate through naturally because
is it always seasonal? Is that a rule?
It's
for you
always
guys?
seasonal, 100%.
Why
Yeah,
is
like
that?
if you're because why do it any other way? Why would you want the product at the best physical point of the year to eat it? Why would you want a tomato in January? Like, what's the point? You want to half-ass your life? You want to half-ass food? Like, I don't get that. Like, if you're going to invest in something, why would you want a knockoff version of it? Like, so the whole idea behind that is just like, not only do I have confidence in what we're capable of, but I also have confidence in the idea that like, I'm going to give you the best possible product during the best possible point of the year. And I'm going to go 2 steps further than that. Not only am I going to do that, but I'm also going to tie the menu directly to the story of the individual that we're doing it for. Cultural heritage, cultural backgrounds, nationalities, childhood upbringings. If it's like wedding clients, it's their first dates. It's their like all of these things. Why wouldn't I want to make you feel like you're literally the most important person in the world that day? Like that for me, like that's it. Like when I took that first bite of food and they're like, holy shit, I remember sitting in Sicily at that corner, at that cafe, biting into this dish 7 years ago. And I'm having it right now with the most important people of my life in the same room with me. Like that's power. That's so
awesome.
much power.
So you sit down with your clients and you ask, like, do you have like a list of questions that you go through normally? Got it.
So we do, it's like a 3-step process, right? So because we're fortunate enough to have our events booked out a year in advance, the initial call goes in and it's really just like, they get so confused by it because they're trying to get all this information. I'm like, no. This is an interview on you. This is if I want to work with you guys. It has nothing to do with me. Like I interview them individually and I want to know everything about them. And I look for a lot of key words that I don't want to fuck with. The word I is not something I'm interested in. I. If you're a couple, you should not be speaking in I's. You should be speaking in we's. Like if you're a corporation, if you're not talking about the team, then why are you talking at all? You don't exist without the team. That's the reality behind it. If it's an anniversary or a 50th birthday party, if you're not talking about the person that the party's for, then why are we even talking? But it's also like, why are you going to tell me what I should do? You don't know what I do. You don't do what I do.
You're not the expert here.
This is what it is. You hire a specialist. Why wouldn't you want the specialist to do what they do best?
That's true.
Right? Not only am I taking the specialty of like our style of cooking, I'm taking our specialty of our connection with the individual community and the farmers that are there and the artisans and all that other stuff, distilleries, wineries, all that stuff. But I'm also taking the specialty of knowing that like these ears absorb everything. And, there was a client maybe 3 years ago, probably 3 years ago, and she was so nervous to tell me about what her dining habits were. Because she was raised in a family that like didn't, they had like Campbell's soup and like Ritz crackers with cheese on it. Like that's what it was. And I was like, that's beautiful. And she's like, why? And I was like, it's a memory. Food is a memory. And I turned it into this like charred bread tomato panzanella dish. And she was like, how did you get there? And it's like, and I'm like, well, my brain is able to do that. You're just there to like accept what's coming to you. But you're also the same person that told me you wanted pigs in a blanket at your wedding. And I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not your
I want
caterer.
more for you.
Like, and that's what it is. And I think the power of no, I mean, I've had grooms like straight up like cry on the phone because I wouldn't do sliders. I'm like, dude, like you're a grown ass man. Like, why are you like, I was like, do you understand what you're paying right now to ask me to make you a slider? It's not the point that I can't make it. It'll be the best slider you ever had. But the point is like, for what?
Right.
And I'll never forget that wedding because it was in the pandemic. And I was like, here's what we're going to do. You're going to go to Buffalo Wild Wings. You're going to buy a bunch of sliders. You're going to bring it there and I'll have my staff serve it back to you. But I'm not making it. And also you're paying for the sliders. I'm not doing it. And he was like, that's ridiculous.
What was his response? Yeah.
He's like, that's ridiculous. I was like, I know. So I was asking for sliders. It's fine. It's just, you have to kind of, when you deal with people that have a chip or a collar or a tax bracket, sometimes those people need to just be put in their place in the most respectful way possible. But like, I don't care how much money you have. It means nothing to me. You're not me. You don't know what I do. You hired me to do a service, and I'm not the help. I'm the experience. And that's the standard I set for all of my employees. Like, that's a big thing for us. It's in our contract. Like, if you treat any of our staff members like they're the help for the day, we will pack everything up and go.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. That's like a non-negotiable for me. We're all human beings here. You don't talk to us like we're less than anything. We're the reason why you're here today. We're the reason why everybody's happy. We're not like this little penguin suited catering service. That's not us. We're here because you wanted us to be here, and I chose to be here. That's the other thing too. It's like we choose to do the things that we do. So, back to the idea of knowing that, like, I just want to give you the best possible dining experience you're going to have in your life, because I'm going to think about everything that you are not thinking about. And it's not about being the best new restaurant, not any of that. It's not knowing what your own guilty pleasures are and me doing my own versions of it and giving it back to you.
That's beautiful.
And then you eat it and you're looking at all your family and like, what? I don't even remember saying this.
That's amazing.
We had a kid 2 years ago. He was raised by a single mom. Like, it was him and like 2 or 3 brothers, a single mom. Because she only had so much time, she would make these Lipton French onion soup packets, like broth, for like years. That's what he ate, and he was like, I don't know how to explain this to you. And I was like, I mean, yeah, it's rough, but like, do you still eat it? He was like, to this, like, it's my favorite thing on the planet.
Oh, wow.
Because all I know, and obviously, like, I turned into this, like, oh, we're going to do this whole roasted ribeye with a French onion soup condiment on top, and like all these things.
Amazing.
But I remember him taking that first bite and just a tear rolling down his eye, because he was like, I just don't, like, I don't think you understand how important this was to me. And I was, no, I do understand.
Yeah.
I always understand.
Yeah.
Because I have my own memories of things. I have my own things that are so important to me that, like, I do have moments where I shed a tear, because it's just like, it's the pivotal point of being human.
Absolutely.
Those individual moments are so important, and being able to give those to our clients, for me, that's truly why I do this. Like, I just give a shit that much.
Yeah. And it's in the pinnacle of every step of your business, from the clients to the way that you treat your staff to the partners that you've brought on. And it's very interesting, because normally that is the exact element that gets lost when you're starting a business,
Right.
because you're worried about the operations, you're worried about how much money am I going to make, because, to be frank, you're worried about your survival at that point. Yeah. Right. So how did you cultivate that balance?
I think it's, I think it's just in a full transparency moment. I think I was never worried. I was never worried because the phone always rang. I was never worried because the email always showed up. We were never worried because the inquiries were so consistent that I was like, okay, we need $70,000 more to make this year work. And it was like, in 3 days, you're like, well, that's 2 events. We're done. Like, there was never a turning point or a concern. I think
you had that because of your background and like where you started in the culinary space.
I think it was, I think my name was a part of it. I also think the standard that we had set for so long was doing all the work for us. There was never a point where I was like, holy shit, what do we do? It was just like, okay, how do we handle this? And I think we had gotten to a point where we started to grow so much that it was almost to the point where it was costing us more to operate than we were making in return, because of how big we were going. Doing multiple events within a day where there's multiple staff going out in other places.
Yep.
The control element of it, like, I had full trust in my independent chefs that were doing it. I had full trust in all of that, but it just never felt the right way to do it. And that's why I kept realizing that, like, it's not quantity, it's quality for us. This isn't like, this isn't a company where we're bringing in frozen product to be reheated and served back to guests.
Yeah.
This is something we're still building it from scratch every single time.
Right. So mass production actually works in the opposite.
Right.
For profit for you guys.
Correct.
Got it.
Because it is so expensive for us to operate.
That makes sense, because it's a lot of bodies. And for everyone's context, what would you say your range of revenue is currently?
I would say about in the 1.5 to about $2.5 million range.
Got it.
Is where we are.
And what is your ultimate goal with the company? How much further are you planning to grow it beyond where it is now?
I equate it to a lifestyle, to essentially live in our own little sanctuaries somewhere while things are just happening in the background. And we decide to appear and show our faces whenever we feel like it. And then we decide to disappear whenever we feel like it. I am no longer the martyr that I started it with. I'm at a point now where I realize that, like, number one, I can open up, I could literally set a table in the middle of a field and light a fire anywhere. At any time, company or no company. I could do this whenever I want. But I'm also of the mindset knowing that we've made something that's efficient and it works. And it's gotten the attention of the right people. And we want to entertain those people. If you want to take this on and manage it and we just keep a percentage in on the back end, I am so cool with that. You know, it's not something that I'm like, this is my life's work. I don't think I've gotten to my life's work yet. I think I have just found something that worked so well. And we talked like, you know, the idea of like the imposter syndrome where you're like, I made something that I just made up and now it's taking off and I don't know how else to keep up with it. I don't want to think about the next idea sometimes. I just want someone else to do it because I've already done all the work to get us there. So we want to be at a point where like things are operating in the background and we're just, you know, collecting checks. And I know for me, and I always talk about retirement, I've told everybody, and everybody they've ever known me is like, I've always told them I was going to retire at 45 years old. That has been my goal. It will always be my goal. I'm 37 now.
Okay.
But retirement for me is like living on like a 6,000 acre plot of land in like Montana.
Yeah.
And having this 10,000 square foot warehouse that's on it that literally has every single tool on the planet in it. And if I want to wake up one day and make Italian handbags, I'm going to make one and I'm going to sell it to somebody. And not just like somebody as a person, as like a production company.
Yeah.
And I'm going to come back the next day and be like, I want to make outdoor furniture today.
Yeah.
And I just like, I want to be able to make and create every single day, no matter what. I will never stop working. I will just do it on my own time. And that is what retirement looks like for me. But I will always live comfortably. The other half of that concept is like, I'm still going to host dinners, but like it's invite only. You got to fly in. And if you show up at my property uninvited, like you're getting kicked out.
Right.
I'm not interested in hanging out with anybody.
You
like
are
I
the
just,
type of person to just
yeah,
I don't care if you flew here.
Yeah, I don't care. You know, I think it's about like really creating the lifestyle that we all want. Like it's my world, it's my time, it's my energy, and I only want the people that I want in it, and everybody else can get gone. And I have no interest in like investing myself into other people that aren't going to do the same in return for me. So that's I think where the business model goes. We talked about the product line, obviously getting that into a across the US situation where every single storefront has one, and I'm fine with that. I don't have to have an emotional connection to that.
But it sounds like your goal is not necessarily a number or an amount of units with how much you're selling, but rather the freedom that you have to
it's a lifestyle.
Just create do exactly what you want.
But also like think about like what are the numbers of today going to look like 10 years from now?
That's true.
Terrifying.
Right.
Yeah. Like,
100%.
you know, like a bottle of water is going to be like $14 in 10 years. Like what are we going to do? Like
literally.
How do I sit here and like predict what I want to do money wise where like I already know that costs have gone up like 23% in 3 years? Like it's not going to get any better anytime soon.
For sure.
You know?
So in this very rigorous industry, what are some of those day-to-day habits that you have that really keeps you grounded in, because obviously like the pinnacle of your business is about being present and creating feelings versus just providing something.
Right.
How do you ensure that that's staying top of mind, and how do you keep that internally at your core?
I think separation is the number one thing.
What does that mean?
You have to separate yourself from the business. If you don't separate from yourself from business, and you get lost in it completely.
How do you do that physically?
I work 9 to 5.
9 to 5
I
as
work
an entrepreneur.
9 to 5 as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, they say that's like blasphemous as an entrepreneur.
You manage your time correctly and you do it correctly. And I'm not saying, I mean, we're 6.5 years in. I'm not saying year one, you work 9 to 5. You have to get there.
When did you start working 9 to 5?
2022.
That was what, 4 years in?
That was 4 years in, yeah.
4 years.
2020. And it was never something I would have done on my own unless I wasn't pushed to go there. It was never something I would have done unless my body was like, we can't do this anymore. So separation from the business is number one. The mindset and knowing that you are not the business you've created is also another big thing. You are not your business. You are yourself, and you operate this business.
I feel like a lot of business owners might disagree with you there.
Sure. I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
But those are also people that like can't sleep at night. And I could sleep at night. I could sleep at night because I know that like once that 5 o'clock hits, I have my own things I need to worry about. I have my own personal, goals I want to do. I have my own self-worth that I want to abide by. I have my own resting schedule, my own activities that I want to do. I had screwed up. I don't know if screw up is the right word, but I had screwed up in the idea that like I created a business that was literally my 3 favorite hobbies. So like for 4 years, I didn't have any hobbies. I had nothing. I had work.
Because your hobbies were your business.
Correct. So finding that separation for it was like huge for me, and just knowing like what your worth is, what your time is worth too. Like we just had the conversation the other day with one of our own employees, and she was so eager and so excited to give her phone number to clients. I looked at her and I was like, that was literally one of the biggest mistakes you could have ever made.
Yeah.
She was like, how do you not? And I was like, no, that's my time. They literally have a set schedule that they stick to because that's what I give them. It's knowing what your worth is. It's knowing that like I can figure out and handle everything that I need to do within this 8-hour time slot. And whatever else happens after that is tomorrow's problem. It's not today's problem.
And what do you do in those outside hours?
I do a few different things. So I'm very avid in obviously physical activity. I'm always in motion. So it's like going for walks or whatever, like working on the property or things like that. Like I love just getting dirty with my hands, building something, doing the lawn, whatever it is. It's the simplest things sometimes are the calmest things for the brain. So like this sort of like mundane work of, we're going to pick up sticks for the next hour. I don't have to think about anything except for the sticks that are coming off the ground. Yoga is another big thing for me. Meditation's another big thing for me. Really examining my own sort of like confidence, self-worth, mental health. I'm like about 2 days a week of therapy. Like I'm very big into it because I think it's so important for the longevity of things. But also I think it shows you a lot about who you are as a person and how you're going to change other people's lives. I always just like have this like idea of like, how do you tell anybody how to live their life better if you aren't doing it yourself? Seems pretty ridiculous, right?
That's real.
Obviously I cook on my time off. When it's my time, it's my time. I don't feel like it's a job at that point. Sleep, rest. I am a religious YouTube person. I forever want to learn more. So you will find me after smoking a beautiful little joint, watching videos of like how to pour a concrete slab because I want to know how to do that for a project that I'm thinking about 6 months from now.
Yeah.
Everything that I've learned in my current life right now has been from obviously experience that I've had when I was younger. My father's side of the family was all blue collar workers, from painters, plumbers, electricians, woodworkers. I was grounded all the time because I was a confused kid. So I was always at work. That was the baseline for everything. But now I just go onto YouTube and I built and designed the house that we are currently in up in Hudson, New York. Like I've done everything, learn how to weld, learn how to change axles on trucks or trailers. I've done that all through just watching things on YouTube. So that is, I don't really do TV. I do YouTube. Like that's my thing.
Because you like to learn.
I love to learn. But it's also, it's such a, it's so numbing too. When like someone else is
explaining turn your brain off.
Yeah. You're like, I'm here to absorb. I'm here to like question you because I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. And then obviously I love to entertain and I love to go out to eat. I think it's very important to experience other people's food, experience other people's restaurants, all of that stuff. One, as a reality check of kind of where you are within the industry. Not as in like a we're better than you kind of thing, but also just like it's good to see like the best new thing that's coming out. You're like, okay, we're good. Like there's nothing really to worry about here. But also it's just good to see like other tactics of hospitality, or there are so many talented people out there now that are doing what they do. It's good to just research it and see it and be a part of it. Yeah. Then outside of that, it's like art, antiquing. I just like to like keep busy.
Love that.
And then like Monday, like we spoke about last night, that is my day of not existing. And sometimes it looks like me never leaving the couch for 18 hours straight. No phone, no nothing.
Love that.
And then other days it's, I don't know, I'm going to go build a deck. I'm going to do something that makes no sense, but I want to stay active all day and I want my mind to be just at ease. So I'm going to work with my hands.
I love that. And I feel like that keeps like the human element of us versus like operating as a machine, as sometimes we tend to do in business.
Right.
So I want to close out with some rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Just to kind of round out our conversation. If there's someone that wants to start out in the culinary industry, what would you say are maybe 2 to 3 traits that are absolutely non-negotiable that you need to have in order to be successful?
And number 1, do something else. That's number 1. The hospitality industry is the most unforgiving thing on the planet. But if you do and you realize that you are that sick of a human being, you got to separate yourself. You have to separate the emotion from the execution of what's going on. Emotion is the creative side. Execution of it is the black and white side. And people's personal opinions of what you do in the social world we live in, between reviews and everything else, is not a direct reflection of what you've created. And I think there's a really important quote that I had heard that essentially, as an artist, the day that you decide to put your idea on a piece of paper, your job is done. It's not about what your people say in return. When you decide to put yourself out there, your job is complete. You can go home and go to bed. What people's opinions are of your own work is not your problem. That's their problem.
Your job is to create.
Your job is to create. Your job is to have enough confidence to take the insecurities and vulnerabilities of what you are feeling and put it on that piece of paper or in this figure or in this statue or whatever it is. So that's huge. I think number 2 is, profit margins. Hospitality is a world where you just want to give and give and give and give to make people happy. But if you lose track of that, you lose everything. It is one of the hardest industries to be a part of because it is 98% perishable. When you're dealing with fresh product, it's got to be right in the moment or not right at all. And number 3, I would say if you were going to open a restaurant, make it a supermarket during the day.
That's smart. I think you utilize all of your products or anything that didn't end up getting.
And you don't have to open at night. If you don't want to, you can just kind of take the night off and enjoy it.
That's a business concept right there.
It's happening all over the place. It's slowly happening. It started popping up a lot after the pandemic.
That makes sense.
I think people realize that how fragile the hospitality world is when something like that happens.
That makes sense.
So.
Okay. And speaking of perishable items, which unfortunately in the US, I wish our items were more perishable. I feel like we've been seeing, or at least I've been seeing on my TikTok feed, how our food is becoming less and less edible. We have avocados and watermelons that are bendable, plastic blueberries. You obviously have a huge network of local farmers and also produce that is very good for you. Kind of another 2-part question. I feel like by now I love these. 1, what are the benefits to eating local or sustainably? And 2, if you're in the New York area, because there's only so far we can go, if you're in the New York area, what is your suggestion to eating as healthy as possible?
So I think food is broken into 2 separate categories, right? It's like what's good for you and what's convenient. I think that's our food industry as a whole.
Yep.
What's convenient right there,
we
easy,
thrive
simple.
off of convenience in America.
1000%. That is the business model of food is convenience.
Yes.
Right? That's why McDonald's will never go out of business. But the best restaurant in America, the best restaurant in America can go out of business. That's the scary concept behind it. So I think number 1, when you decide to source locally from your community or even places outside of community, 2 things come into play. 1, you have a responsibility to use that product correctly because now you are dealing with people that have given their life to make that product. Number 2 is the price, obviously, right? We talked about this last night. Organic food, natural food, local food is way more expensive than walking into Stop and Shop or ShopRite or any of those things. But what you pay in natural organic food up front is essentially what you're going to pay in medical bills on the back end if you continue to eat food that's coming from a processing plant. So balance it out from there. When you decide to make that investment of now going to the farmer's market, right? Convenience is going to a supermarket. Walking in, having everything you need in one place. It's a little harder to go to a farmer's market and find exactly what you're looking for. So if you're going to take that time and invest that time into yourself and invest that cash into what that is, you now have a responsibility to use every aspect of it and enjoy every aspect of it.
And what is the primary difference between a farmer's market and supermarket food?
The middleman, it's really just the middleman. It's, we talked about this the other night. It was, Sergio, who only grows 100 tomatoes a year, but they're the best tomatoes you ever eat in your life in comparison to, Mott's, who makes, 50 million tomatoes a year, but half of them don't taste like anything. They're just like watery potatoes. The difference.
And you feel the difference like
1000%
as well.
From just from the digestion alone. You feel it. How many times have we gone out to eat and we're just sitting there like beached whales afterwards, just bloated and it was so good, but I'm so lethargic and I hate this and I don't want this. That is never how I want to feel after eating, but unfortunately that's always how I feel after eating.
In America.
Yes.
Right? We don't necessarily feel that when we go overseas.
Correct.
Why is that?
There's no filler, there's no spray, there's no fertilizer, there's no steroid. There's just this is the product for what it is, here it is. There's no supermarkets, right? You go to Croatia, you go to Italy, whatever, you're I need fish today, you go to the fish market, you go to the farm stand, you go to the butcher shop that has the cow still walking around in the background. You go to the source. You don't go to the secondary source that has tampered with it so that shelf life is longer than it would have normally been.
And if there are people that don't necessarily have access to food markets, because I can acknowledge in New York City that is a luxury that we have, is there a way that you can still shop in a convenience store or in a supermarket and not necessarily get the same effects that you have when you eat regular pasta? Or are the organic fruits and vegetables to the same caliber as a farmer's market?
Yeah, I would say I would say honestly at this point between cities and everything else, there's so many co-ops now. There's co-ops that exist all over the place between Brooklyn.
There's one on my block. I never knew what that was.
Yeah, co-ops are essentially an anchor point for multiple separate businesses to come in and sell their products through. Co-ops are primarily focused around farms and artisans. So I think in every city there's co-ops all over the place. So like it's no longer an excuse that you can't eat well. I don't think it's really an excuse anymore, but if you don't have that means,
Agreed.
right? If you're up on O Block or you're somewhere like that doesn't exist, you have to like take a step back for a second, right? So like anything for me, anything that's in like a cryovac sealed bag, like don't fucking eat it. There's a reason why it's been sitting on the shelf for that long.
Fair.
You know, there's a reason why like you saw it last week and it's still there and it's still not discolored.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of chemicals going on in there. You know, I feel like sometimes you just have to simplify what the menu should be. And unfortunately, we live in a country where it's expensive as fuck to eat healthy. I never understood that. I never will understand that. But I also understand that we live in a capitalist society and it's a great way to make money by selling something that is a luxury. Eating well is a luxury. It's not a support of living
in America.
In America, right? Like, and that's the craziest part too. It's like you go to Italy, you go to this place, you have the truffles, you have all this stuff, and you're like, yeah, it's whatever. It's like $14. Enjoy yourself. And you're like, I'm sorry, what? Yeah. It's like $250 at a restaurant to get truffles on my pasta. Like, we've set this world up to be, let's make money off of everything.
Yep.
So I think when you get to those areas where you don't have that luxury of having everything there, it's number one, doing your research of what's also going on in that area, because there is always a community garden. There are so many, especially now with these rooftop things that are happening all over the place. Yeah. I think there's accessibility to food that is way easier than people expect. And I also think that people within the community are giving people the opportunity to get free food from what they have. Outside of that, like, I don't really know what the right answer is, because we've kind of put ourselves in these corners where if you can't afford a certain amount of food, then what really is your option besides growing it yourself? Yeah. You know, you got like a 10 by 10 block of land in your front yard. You can put a garden in it.
I guess that's why they're saying we're in a food crisis.
We are definitely in some sort of a food crisis.
So I like to end all of my podcasts with this one question. We already kind of touched on it, but just to round us out, the definition of purpose is the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. Do you feel like you're currently living within your purpose?
No.
Really?
No.
I'm actually surprised by that answer.
No, and it's funny because I just had this conversation the other day, and it's not coming from a point where I feel lost. I just don't think I've hit the potential that I know I'm worth yet.
Purpose and potential are two different things.
Well, I think that I don't think I've hit the legacy that I want to create yet. I think I've started it. I think the wheels are rolling. I think everything that I have put momentum and purpose into has been accomplished. But when I go to sleep at night, I'm always thinking about what's next, and I'm not thinking about what I've done. And I think for me, my purpose is getting to a point where everybody is lifted, but I'm no longer thinking about what's next. I'm here, and it's all happening, and it's relevant within this space right now. Yeah.
I love that. Well, that might take a long time in this country.
Damn right. That's right. But we're going to go to another country. It's fine.
Right.
Do it somewhere else.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dan. I truly appreciate it.
Great.
This was amazing. I'm humbled and honored to be able to help you tell your story. Not that I've helped you, but give the platform for you to tell your story.
But you're here today because of the conversation I think we had.
Exactly.
And that's the best part about it.
Exactly. Love that trickle effect. Yes. Thank you again.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
All right.